So this is my Module 6 restructured video. Like usual, I am trying to use some different technology now, so I've decided to switch back to my PC instead of my Mac and try the OneNote software and a new screen recording software as well. So we'll see how this goes. Alright, so we're given this equation here and we are asked to solve for x. So always a good idea to list out what is actually happening to x first, right? So we have an x value. It's being multiplied by -2. Then we take 7 away from that value. Then we take the square root of that value. We multiply it by 3 and then add 5, and we should end up with an answer of 8. So when we're trying to solve these equations for a variable, we need to work backwards and undo what we have just done to this variable. And to undo something, we use our inverse operations. So I've color-coded these to match the different steps here. So if I added 5, my first step would be to subtract 5. My goal there is that if I have a -5 and a +5, we add them together, we're going to get the value of 0. Then working backwards, right? We multiplied by 3, so I need to divide by 3. As we've been seeing it before, multiplying by a third is the same idea. We take the square root. Our inverse operation will be to square that number. Then we would be subtracting 7, so our inverse is to add 7. And then our last step, we multiply by -2, so I need to undo that by dividing by -2. Which would be the same as multiplying by -1/2. So I'm going to try and do these in terms of the inverse operations now. So this should all end up equaling the value of 8. So my first step, so here's our original problem, and what I've decided to do was our first step, subtract 5 from both sides. So I know this isn't really the additive inverse, but a +5 minus 5 gives me that value of 0. I've made a 0 pair that's gone away. So we subtract -5 from the left side as well. So now I end up with 3 equaling 3 times the square root of -2x minus 7. Then our second step. Right, we've divided, we subtracted 5, now we need to divide by 3 as our second step. This is the same as multiplying by a third, which we've done before. I just put it as dividing by 3 here. We're multiplying by 3, so we can divide everything by 3. I notice that 3 divided by 3 is 1, or 3 times 1/3 is 1. 3 and the 3 here are going to divide out and make a 1, and anything times 1 is itself, so this is just really the square root of -2x minus 7. For our third step, we had to remove the square root. I'm sorry, this software got a little funky here with the parentheses, so I apologize for that. So what we're going to do is we're going to square both sides. So I'm squaring this square root. Well, they're inverse operations. They're going to undo each other. So we're just going to be left with what's inside of that radical sign, that -2x minus 7. And 1 squared is 1. Our second to last step here to undo this was to get rid of, or to add the 7 to both sides in an attempt to make 0 there. So that way we're starting to get that x value by itself. So that's going to make a 0. 1 plus 7 is 8. So we're left with -2x equaling the value of 8. And then we have to try and get that x by itself. And to do that, we can divide both sides by -2, or we could multiply both sides by 1/2. So if I do that, 8 divided by -2 is a -4, and a -2 divided by a -2 is a +1, right? We've made that value of 1, so we get 1x by itself. So always a good idea to go through and double check your answer, make sure it is the correct one. So what I have done is I've replaced, so here's our original problem. I always think it's a good idea, and through these videos I've noticed some people have said this, to rewrite that original problem first before we substitute in our numbers. So we're replacing x with this -4 value just to make sure we got it right. Order of operations, I want to simplify it under here first. So -2 times -4 is a +8, and then 8 minus 7 is 1. Well, the square root of 1 is 1, and 3 times 1 is 3, and 3 plus 5 is indeed 8. So I know I have the correct answer here. So when we're solving equations, always a good idea to think about what is actually happening to our variable, and then what are my steps to work backwards and undo what I have just done to that variable, and lastly, check our answer.